Meanwhile, President Trump's warning to Iran now. He says Iranian leaders have 10 to 15 days to make a deal or, quote, bad things will happen. The president saying that he's considering a limited strike on Iran to pressure them into a deal. For more on all of this, I'm joined by former Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council, Javed Ali. Javed, thank you so much for joining us here. So Iran has responded to the president's threats, saying that it would respond decisively if the U.S. strikes, and that all bases, facilities, and assets of the hostile force in the region would constitute legitimate targets. That's according to Iran. What do we know right now about Iran's capabilities here? And what should we expect from the regime if the U.S. does go ahead with some sort of military attack?
So, Gio, nice to be with you as well. And picking up on some of your comments, there are 13 U.S. bases spread across the Middle East that have between 30 to 40,000 troops stationed in those different locations. And then we have the thousands of troops at sea, or personnel at sea, in the two carrier battle groups and other ships at sea that have been in this naval deployment. So there are a lot of U.S. personnel in the region. And what Iran is warning is that if the U.S. goes ahead and conducts a military campaign, even if it's limited, that it will probably try to retaliate in ways that Iran has not yet retaliated against the United States in January 2020, and then even last year in the aftermath of Operation Midnight Hammer. And that would mean that they would use much more of their drone and ballistic missile and cruise missile capabilities, even though a lot of that was damaged in the war with Israel last year. Apparently, they've rebuilt some of that and produced more of those types of weapons. So that's a threat. There are other attacks that Iran could launch that they haven't yet against the United States: cyber operations, terrorism, attacks against commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf. So there's a whole range of things that could happen, and things could spiral out of control very quickly.
What do we know, if anything, about the U.S. military's plans right now?
So this is another thing that I would have to believe the White House and President Trump has been presented with a whole menu of options from the military in terms of what would be considered a heavy option of weeks-long series of strikes and a major air campaign against dozens, if not hundreds, of targets in Iran, to then probably something that looks like a much more narrow set of options, more limited strikes, perhaps something that we saw last summer with Operation Midnight Hammer and the attacks against Iran's 3 nuclear facilities. They might go after other senior leadership in the regime. Would they go after the supreme leader himself? That's an open question. Senior members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So there's probably a whole spectrum of military options the Pentagon has presented. And now it's a question of which one of those will President Trump choose, at least initially, if he decides to launch a military campaign.
So Iran obviously has many historic foes in the region, including Israel, of course, but also Gulf states like Saudi Arabia. So where do those countries stand on a potential U.S. attack on Iran?
So what we've heard from media reporting is that Israel seems to be tipping more into the camp of they would possibly even join a U.S. campaign against Iran. And as we know, Israel has been fighting Iran for decades covertly, and then over the last couple of years overtly with strikes in 2024, and then last summer's 12-day campaign. But the other countries in the region that you mentioned are more on the diplomatic side of not going down this road of conflict. So we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out.
All right, Javed Ali, thank you so much for your guidance on all of this. We appreciate it.